All right, so the fact that I've posted this means that the Philadelphia 76ers have been eliminated and did not win the 2021 NBA championship. And a lot of the Sixers fans, they were getting really upset with Ben Simmons, saying that Ben Simmons down the stretch of games, he's a liability out there because he can't make his free throws. He doesn't do enough for the offense to, put him in the game. Of course, he's an all-league defender, but what can he provide for you on offense? And that's the big question that they're thinking there. And so most people that are Philadelphia 76ers fans are saying it's time to move on. It's time to just build around Joel Embiid, but you can't have Ben Simmons because he can't make anything outside of 3 feet. And he doesn't even seem engaged in the game. He really hasn't put much work ethic in. So I feel like I can kind of understand where the Sixers fans are coming from. But obviously, Philadelphia being eliminated, they're going to have to make a move, and I think he's going to be the one to go. But being that I am a Chicago Bulls fan, I think that we could potentially make something work, and that is a trade, of course. Now, let's see here, because the Chicago Bulls, we're kind of in a bit of a funk. We traded for Vucevic at the deadline. So with 2 All-Stars, I think everyone thought we'd make the playoffs or at least the play-in, and we didn't. And now we don't have our first-round pick this year unless Orlando, gets extremely screwed. But let's talk about the package that could potentially be sent for Ben Simmons. And the package that I'm thinking of, the first part is Lauri Markkanen. I've been high on him from the start. I still am pretty high on him. I think that the coaching staff has kind of done him wrong, and I feel like the system sometimes is really not great for him, and sometimes he loses confidence in himself as a player. At the beginning of the season, he was starting, he was the second option, everything looked great. This is a career year for him. Then he got moved to the bench, and it was probably his worst statistical year by the end of it. But I think that Lauri, he can definitely help the Philadelphia 76ers in this trade package. Throwing in Thomas Satoransky and Ryan Arcidiacono, that's about $20 million in total for the Chicago Bulls sending this trade. And then I'd also throw in a 2022 second-round pick, 2024, maybe a top 10 protected first-round pick. I don't think that by 2024, if this is the team we had, that we should even be in the lottery. So that really shouldn't be an issue there. But just a top 10 in case we are somehow struggling mightily. But, giving him a few shooters as well. Satoransky's not a terrible defender. But Lauri Markkanen, he's a young player that could have a lot of value. And also some picks. Now, the Bulls would have about $30 million in cap space prior to any moves. So if they start with this Ben Simmons trade, with just for Ben straight up, they'll still have about $18 million in potential cap space afterwards. Now, looking at the team last year, we were 14th in defensive rating, which is actually pretty good considering most of the last few seasons we've been horrible defensively. But I think that with this team, Ben Simmons could actually mentor, Nikola Vucevic a little bit on interior defense, and so could Thad Young, because remember, Vucevic, he hasn't really played a full season with us yet. And he could also mentor Kobe White defensively on the perimeter. Now, Kobe White's defensive potential, he's 6'4", probably more towards 6'5". He's one of the more athletic players in the league. So I don't really understand how he can't be a great defensive player for us. But of course, with the recent news that he's going to have shoulder surgery, he's going to be out about 4 to 6 months, which is about October to December timetable to return. So what should the Bulls do? You got to go out and get a solid point guard to, fill that void. And I think some of the names, Reggie Jackson, he's been playing great for the Clippers right now. He might want a little bit too much money, though, so probably not. Of course, you also have Cameron Payne, which, depending on whether or not CP3 takes his option, could be more likely or less likely for us to bring him back. Also, actually, I don't even know if he'd want to come back after what the Bulls have said, but, Cameron Payne, we need you. Other guys could be Austin Rivers and Wesley Matthews. Doesn't even really have to be a point guard. Just someone that can be a solid perimeter shooter and someone that can defend. I actually like the idea of Austin Rivers, probably a little bit more than Wesley Matthews, but either one could work. Even Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose had a great defensive season this year with the Knicks, and he had his best three-point shooting season of his career, shooting about 39% and about 41% after the trade to New York. So any of these guys could work in the meantime while Kobe White's still recovering. On the offensive end, we were 20th in offensive rating, but where would Ben's role be? I feel like he'd be more like a Draymond Green. And, he doesn't have to be a scoring threat with LaVine, with Vucevic, in time, Kobe White on the roster again. If he plays in the high post, we could run Vucevic either down low for like a high-low game, or he could space out the floor. And if everyone's spacing out the floor, they might clog the paint defensively, and it could open up shooters. If not, then, Ben should be able to have his way and get to the basket. And the rest of the guys, like, LaVine, whoever that point guard that we could sign, Kobe when he returns, if we bring back Garrett Temple, Troy Brown Jr., whoever, they could all just be on the perimeter and open up the floor. We could get a few more shooters as well. Guys like JJ Redick, who hasn't really played much with the Dallas Mavericks, since he got traded there. I know that was a whole fiasco with the New Orleans Pelicans when he went there originally. Also Tim Hardaway Jr. We don't know what's going to happen there because the Mavericks, they just got new management. So we're going to see what's going to happen with how much they're willing to pay Tim Hardaway Jr. and the guys around Luka to help better their team. I think another one is Alec Burks. He had a really great year this year that nobody's really talking about. And also Malik Monk. I think that he had a few more flashes this season about how he can be a solid, rotational player at the guard position. He could be a solid ball handler. He could be a solid defender, solid three-point shooter. And I think that's kind of just what we need. And speaking of shooting, we can even talk about who Ben Simmons might be able to pick up a few tips on, and that is Drew Hanlon, who is also one of Zach LaVine's trainers. Now, Ben doesn't have to become a three-point specialist by any means, but maybe like a free throw specialist or something. He's got to be able to hit shots from about 13 to 15 feet. But, as we're looking into the new form team here, we would still have Thaddeus Young. If we were to add a veteran point guard, bring back Temple, fill out the team with floor spacers, at least one of those being a playoff experienced vet, then I think we'll be a really good team next year. The starting lineup would be Kobe White when healthy, Zach LaVine, Pat Williams, Ben Simmons, and Vucevic to round out the starters. I know a lot of people have been saying bad stuff about Kobe White, but I still believe in him as well. I feel like a lot of his worst games this season happened actually when he was coming off the bench. So if he's in the starting lineup, if he's playing with confidence, because he'd probably be the second or third option on this roster here, which is kind of what he was at the beginning of the season with him, Markkanen, and LaVine, this past year. So I think that he'd kind of be fine in this role, and I like that starting lineup for us. There's a lot of defensive potential as well. And then the bench, potentially, Austin Rivers, Alec Burks, Wesley Matthews, Troy Brown Jr., Thaddeus Young, possibly Nerlens Noel at center. If you noticed, I basically picked a lot of Knicks role players because they play with a lot of energy this year. They were a great three-point shooting team this season, and they're one of the best defenses in the league. Also, remember, even though we wouldn't have our first-round pick unless it gets in the top 4, then it would transfer to the Orlando Magic, we would still have a pick swap in the second round of this year's draft. So we could also pick up a big there if we can't get someone like Nerlens Noel or some elite rim protector down low as well. I think this would assert us, though, near the top of the East. Not above the Nets since they're OP. The Bucks would still likely get a better record than us. But, the 76ers, if they add Markkanen, and if they build around Embiid correctly, would probably still be better. But I think everything else is fair game. The only other maybe team is the Heat, but after a blunder season and going all in for Oladipo, who got hurt, aging and declining veterans, I wouldn't bet on them making a same outcome like they did in 2020 where they went to the NBA Finals. The Hawks will be nice for sure, but I believe that these are the moves that the Bulls could make if we got Ben Simmons, and it would help us a lot. Chicago, we're the third biggest NBA market behind New York and LA. Really, the Lakers, because the Clippers, everyone's talking about how they're in the basement. So we're the third biggest NBA team market that there is. So if we were to make a move like that to pair these three people that were 2021 All-Stars on the one team, then I like our chances. But at this point, the Bulls, we haven't made the playoffs in 4 years, and if we don't make it next year, it's going to be 5. And it's just going to feel like forever that it's been since we've actually had a really good team. End that little drought so that people can't be talking smack about the Chicago Bulls anymore. Because honestly, the NBA is better when the Bulls are better. Just like what happened with the Knicks this season, what happened with the Lakers starting last season. And, I just want to see it as a Bulls fan as well. So you guys can tell me, in the comments below what you think. Do you think that the Bulls getting Ben Simmons, maybe making some of these other moves, could help them out? Do you think that getting Ben and maybe some other moves that I didn't list could also help them out? Or do you just think that Ben Simmons isn't the answer? Because I feel like he could still be very effective in the right system. Philadelphia, it doesn't seem like it's it. I think that's ran its course. I think it's time for them to move on. Just let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm out. Peace.